I will call the meeting of the Conservation Commission for June 19th open. And the first item on our agenda is to approve minutes from June 5th.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. We have a new, yes.
If you would, Scott from Holmgren has to be in Hingham, and if we could take him out of order and have him give his presentation. Scott?
I have to be in Marshfield.
Oh, you do too?
Okay. Any complaints? Okay.
I'll be 2 minutes on it. Okay.
All right.
Thanks. I don't even have anything to present for the board. I think we were here a couple weeks ago for the enterprise project.
Yep.
So
Right.
our question was about sending it out for another review. We're going through the planning board process at the same time. It's already been reviewed, or is in the process of being reviewed by Nick Laney. And we were just wondering where his review does take into account the drainage, stormwater management, all the stormwater management guidelines, if we could use his review along with for the Conservation Commission, as opposed to going through the time and the money of getting a second review for you folks. We are honoring the 50-foot buffer zone in all cases, as we've talked about in the past. So
Didn't we ask that question the first time? Yeah, did you?
Yeah, and you decided you go with the 53G, so I guess they're asking again. I had suggested when they broached the subject with me that of course the commission wanted an independent look at it, but that perhaps I could meet with the 53G, the planning board's consultant,
Yeah.
and Holmgren's,
Right,
sit down and talk about what they've done face to face, engineer to engineer,
right.
and see if that would help with.
I mean, it's not
Speeding
that
up the process.
complex, is it?
right.
Well, the planning board reviewer looks at how does it compare to the planning board rules and regulations.
Right, right.
Your 53G would look at it from the stormwater bylaw point of view,
Right.
making sure that all of those items that we require under the stormwater bylaw
Right.
get dealt with, whereas it's not required of the planning board's engineer to do that.
So you think you could pretty much
Yeah,
find out what you need to find out?
exactly.
I don't care then.
So he would still do the 53G
Yeah.
for you, would do the review, but maybe hearing what's already been done, it might eliminate a little bit of the time involved.
Sure.
I would go with the
Okay.
speedier process to,
All right.
Yeah.
That sounds fair.
Do we don't need a motion for that, do we? Or do, because we did ask for
No.
it before.
No, because you already decided.
we've already
before,
got
but-
53G, but if John can speed the process up
We're
by
gonna
sitting
use
them
the
all
same
down.
53G, is that basically?
No, we've already got the one on staff to do the stormwater
Okay.
and to do the town bylaw.
Right.
But we're gonna have them concentrate on the conservation stuff in the town bylaw and see if they can sit down and do the planning
Okay.
board stuff
All right, I get you.
as already reviewed to help.
Okay.
Instead of him having to go through the whole entire planning board part again,
All right, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
right?
So we'll need the fee of $2,500 deposited before I can send it out to him.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, folks.
All right. Next is our new public hearing for 38 Hartshorn. And while he's setting up, I will read that into the record. Under the Wetland Protection Act, Chapter 131, Section 40 of Mass General Law is amended in the West Bridgewater Wetland Protection Bylaw, Rules and Regulations. The West Bridgewater Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing the 19th of June, 2018, in the McDonald Brown Conference Room, 65 North Main Street, for a request for determination of applicability of application filed by Collins Engineering on behalf of Susan Payne for a decommission of an existing septic system and install a new system within the vicinity of a wetland at 38 Hartshorn Street. And we're open.
All right, my name's Dave Clinner from Collins Civil Engineer Group. Here are the
Green
cards.
cards, perfect.
What we have is the yellow is the property line The green is the wetland, existing wetland delineated by Brook Monroe. The orange is the 50, and the pink is the 100-foot buffer. The septic system is proposed to be 99.9% out of the 100-foot buffer at the leaching field. It's 99 feet away. It's probably 99 point something, but 99 feet away from the wetland. The wetland is located at the rear of the property. There's a stone wall there, and when you go beyond the stone wall, it's mowed up to the stone wall, and then you go beyond the stone wall, and it's pretty obvious where the wetland line is due to the plant species and the topography. The drainage of the lot basically goes from the front of the lot to the rear of the lot. The septic system itself is going to be a mounted system. There's a very high water table there. We're going to need a small retaining wall, and we're going to be replacing the existing tank with a new tank outside the 50 and a new pump chamber. And they will be inside the 100-foot, but outside the 50. All the work that's going to be done to the septic system will be outside the 50. The only thing that we're going to do inside the 50 is decommission the existing tank. And it's an all lawn area right up to the stone wall. We do propose a silt fence that surrounds the limit of work area. We just bring it around the existing tank so we can decommission it, and we follow it outside the 50 and up to the side of the property. There are 2 catch basins in the street, and we will protect those with silt sacks, and we'll monitor anything that goes through there.
Looks pretty cut and dried.
With me tonight is Susan Pye. She's behind the board.
I'm here.
The New Brunswick lady.
That one drove all those crazy miles today.
Just to see this.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm curious.
Hell, I have no questions.
John, anything? Comments?
As my report indicates, I wanted to see it before I would answer whether they could do it as a determination of applicability or a notice of intent or request for determination or a notice of intent. So in the past, we've had some issues with people not respecting the wetland line without having at least a little bit more teeth as a order of conditions could put onto the property.
Right.
And so I went out, and that stone wall is a definite barrier. The current owner has not encroached in any way beyond the wall. I would assume that any new owners would do the same and not encroach. So they are proposing the 3 conservation markers with signs, and I don't see a need to have a order of conditions that would require anything more than that. So I'm recommending that it be considered a -3 determination with conditions.
Conditions being the,
No yard debris over the wall? At least none noticed?
None.
Wasn't either.
Seems to happen a lot in a lot of places. I was just curious if,
yeah.
not saying the current owner does, but the next one, if the markers weren't there, might. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I will entertain a motion to issue a -3 with conditions.
I'll make the motion.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to New Brunswick.
I didn't see one mounting. And I fly. You just hold your breath. Thank you.
Yes, good
Yeah,
night.
you're welcome.
Next on our agenda, we have 109 Spring Street.
That's a certified mail.
for the meeting? Oh, that's for the,
That's a
All right.
certified
Yeah.
mail to the abutters.
All right, good evening. Greg Driscoll, David Driscoll Engineering, and Matthew Watsky, representing Mr. Jack Peters for Spring Commons. We're here for an amended order of conditions due to a project change. So if you guys remember, this project was 6 lots before, much longer road, much more infrastructure and work. So the project has been cut down to 3 lots, a shorter road, no retaining walls required for the road. We're using a wet basin, best management practice that's in the stormwater handbook for Massachusetts, instead of the infiltration basin that we had before, which was back in this area. Still doing a common septic system on a separate lot up front over here. The road is pretty much going to be kept to the existing grade within a foot or two, just to keep the, there's a high point here, and we're keeping the water flowing all the way down. And this crushed stone riprap scupper right here will feed a swale into a 4-bay, and then the wet basin right here. It's got a 10-foot wide aquatic bench around it, and there's a deep section of it that helps treat the runoff. And we have an outlet structure here. So the drainage calculations show that it all works. We're also helping alleviate a drainage issue with 48 Harvestwood. So we're doing a little grading work back in here to get that water to go overland onto the road and into the basin. So you guys are pretty familiar with the site. We've done this before, and basically cut it down from 6 to 3 lots and save a lot of work.
John, you want to?
I attached a review by the planning board's engineering consultant for your reference, but he does ask that some changes, or suggest that some changes be made, and I'm wondering, did you make any yet, or are you waiting?
I did. I have a draft response, since that was addressed to the planning board. I have a draft response and a draft set of plans for tonight. I wanted to incorporate anything we got from feedback from the Conservation Commission tonight into a full revision.
All right,
That
so
will issue probably later this week.
he made a comment about the fact that you're comparing the existing conditions as of, let's say, currently out there, which has a very poor vegetative cover, and that you're showing that by putting a lush green lawns out there that you'll be reducing the runoff. And my question about that is it appropriate for you to be doing that when this used to have a good vegetative cover? Thank you. Over until Mr. Peters started cutting all the trees down and destroying the surface there with all of his construction work and stockpiling of materials. So I would be more inclined to believe that you should be looking at it, comparing what it was before he did all that to what you will have there under under proposed conditions.
Okay.
And that could affect your calculations to some extent. You may have answered that in the letter here.
I did, but Mr. Laney didn't go back as far as before all the clearing and the stockpiling and everything went on back there, and that's, so I addressed it more as compared to this condition. where I believe that compared to this condition, its current state, having the lawns out there, and even if they're not maintained to a very good condition, if they're maintained even in a fair condition, it would be better than what's there currently. So it's gonna improve what's going on right now out there. It is difficult to try and get infiltration due to the elevation of the groundwater in this area, the low area that we have to work with for this layout of the project to get infiltration and to meet that standard. So, that's how I was meeting the standard before was the change in cover.
Have you given any thought of using roof drains for each one of the new houses? And any other
That was mentioned.
bioretention basins, those kind of things that you don't have to do the same depth as you do for your drainage basin, but if you had some low areas in the lawn of the lot and reserve those as bioretention so that you could let it infiltrate through the bottom and you don't have to be as concerned with the water table on them.
Greg, could you explain for us how you did the drainage calculations on this in comparison to before? Was the same, did you use the same methodology that was actually approved by both the commission and the planning board previously?
I did. That's how the calculations and drainage report were done the first time around.
This is going to be a homeowners association?
Will be, yes.
For the septic system, but the road.
And
will
for the
be-
drainage in the catch basin?
Well, we will have a homeowners association that will have responsibility for anything that isn't accepted by the town. So, expecting the septic system is certainly not going to be accepted by the town.
Yeah.
And if the town, and some towns are doing this, if the town chooses not to accept the detention basin, the homeowners association would remain responsible for that as well.
Because your intention is to have the cul-de-sac become a town road?
Yes,
Or-
yeah. Or eligible for it.
At least to be able to ask the town meeting to accept it. It's ultimately the town meeting's choice, right?
Right.
So there's no guarantee. And
Right.
Until the town meeting votes, then you maintain it.
Now, on the previous development with all the lots, we had a homeowners association doing the maintenance of the 50-foot buffer to prevent invasive species and that kind of thing. We had some special conditions for that. Obviously, they still have some 50-foot buffer maintenance that they should be concerned with, and so we probably would want that included, just like we did the last time. But I think it's premature to talk too much about specific conditions, but it's good to know they have a homeowner, so that association, so that if we did want to have that provision put back in on the smaller development, that we'd be able to utilize the homeowners as the responsible party.
I mean, we viewed this as really, it's the same project that you had before you that were previously and approved with a much shorter road and fewer square feet of impervious surface from the road and 3 fewer houses. So otherwise, it's the same project. There's less fill material, there's less site work, but the drainage is being managed and the homeowners association would be in control. And so it's just a matter of crafting, as I viewed it, crafting an order of conditions that's referencing the revised plans and then we can move forward.
We're just running into some long-term maintenance and upkeep of these retention basins.
I understand.
And is it the town, is it a homeowner, is it, so
That's-
where it was originally proposed to us as a homeowners association type
And
development.
it still is,
it-
and it still is. And
That's-
every town has that concern too.
Right, that's why I was just asking where it went from 6 to 3, was it still
Yep.
that plan, or was it, okay.
Yeah. And then we have, force mains that are coming outside of the road right away, that's more of a planning board thing, but that's how the sewer's connecting, because they had an issue, they don't want to accept a road that has sewer in it when the town has no sewer department, so.
I have a question for you.
Since
Mr. Laney's, the planning board's consultant, specifically talks about the 10-year storm event. In his, basically, it's his first page under stormwater management, the first sentence. According to the drainage analysis, post-construction peak rate of discharge and total volume of runoff is less than the pre-construction values of the 10-year storm event. Why did he just say the 10-year? How about the 2, 10, and 100?
I'm not sure, maybe town subdivision rules and regulations, it speaks to 10-year, like
So,
the drainage system being able to handle a 10-year storm.
so were you able to do the same for the 100-year storm?
Yes.
All right, I'll take your, you don't have
Yeah,
to.
we have this.
Yeah.
Could you flip back when you can, please, and show me where the 50 is in relation to the house lots?
Okay, well, this right here, this
After
line
you-
shows the green line is the 50-foot,
Yeah,
and these are the areas that are, this is the area of disturbance that we had in the last, that was approved before. The area equals the area that we had before, and then these are all the areas that will be the 50-foot,
yeah, I
areas to be
mean,
left undisturbed and actually
Right,
vegetate
right.
and
I was trying to get a feel for how close to the property lines the 50 is. On
Oh, the ones that had the house location?
The new locations.
Yes.
Oh, the new houses?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are placeholder houses, and when they, the builder does come in,
Right,
they have
they-
different footprints.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
Oh,
the-
you're just showing a location now, there's no final plans or?
No,
Okay.
when they go to get a building
But
permit,
that's the
they do that.
50 way in the back?
Yeah, right along.
Okay, all right. We'll have
And,
to talk about
So,
that.
as an example, it's a good question, Mo, because on that lot number, is it 1? 2, 3 then, sorry. Notice where the 50-foot
Yeah,
buffer is compared to the side of the garage.
yeah.
And yes, maybe a different, or maybe a contractor might position the house a little differently, but there's not a lot of leeway there on that lot. So that's a concern that we had on Luke Estates, for example. The lot number 2 is a little better. You got a little bit more room there, so it's not as much of a concern.
Right.
And then you got lot number 1, where the backyard drops immediately into the 50-foot buffer. So, again, that doesn't leave much of a yard for,
I guess once we see the house drawings, we can then decide.
And then the fencing.
Yeah,
The
they'll have
fencing.
the whole area to do for
Yeah.
yard, so I'll be open.
yeah, so they like to have their pool in the front yard. In this particular case, and as we know it, they don't, so they then come to us and they want the pool in the backyard. And so, we realize this is just a conceptual thing,
Yeah,
but they have to
Yeah.
look a little bit beyond that, so,
And a better concept for a house like this might be one that has the garage out front.
sure,
You know,
Right.
and it's a little narrower.
right.
so we'll address those when it comes time to have the independent, individual lots, but it's just something to keep in mind on this one.
Right. Okay.
So I guess the question that I have is that it is a drastic reduction from the 6 that we had. Less impact. You are compensating for how much you disturb of the 50-foot?
Yep. We kept it to the previous approved area. And compensation area. It's right here. So it's a different hatch view. So the proposed buffer enhancement area is 3,680 square feet, and the area disturbance is 1,700.
Okay.
So,
And that's the same area that we showed before.
question I have is, do we want to send it out to an independent 53G, or because it's such a difference in concept that maybe we can go along with the planning board, or do we want to be consistent from one to the next?
In the previous, we had Mr. Laney read this with conservation.
He did it all the first time, yes, yep. So, Mr. Laney may not be concerned with the stormwater bylaw that the commission operates under, but I'm not advocating that this be closed, that we have to get, if you do stick with Mr. Laney as the reviewer, then I have to meet with him and explain to him the fact that we would expect some type of review based on the stormwater bylaw. And he would have to look at that a little different than the planning board rules and regulations. So I don't know, again, how you want to do it. Do you want us independent or stick with Mr. Laney like we did the
Oh.
first time?
Yeah, well, Laney seems,
Yeah, I support.
I personally like the consistency of getting your own 53.
You say stick with them?
I think we,
I didn't hear what you said.
no, you were thinking of staying with,
yeah, yeah.
All right.
yeah, I think we could
work with
work
him.
with Mr.
So
Laney.
Paula feels
Yeah,
you'd like to stay?
I like to stay consistent with what we do, you know, getting our own. But that's me.
Yeah,
So,
that's
And
fine.
it's probably tells a bit of history lesson. And the stormwater bylaw that came into effect after the original order was approved.
Right.
Is that correct? So
I'd,
we weren't
I'd
subject
have
to
to,
that.
I'd have to research that, but,
So we didn't address it at the original.
It's been so many, yeah.
this is a
We were looking at this as an amendment of an existing permit where the application was filed before the stormwater bylaw went into effect, and so this was not a project that was subject to it. It's still subject to the DEP stormwater guidelines to the extent they're applicable to a small project, and Mr. Laney has reviewed stormwater. So it's going through some stormwater review, but we're not anticipating a full local bylaw stormwater review for the project.
Because of the filing, the original filing.
Because it's an already permitted project and we're just
Right.
amending that prior approval.
Right.
Well, we're trying to make a project that we know you guys really struggled with before. And it went through a lot of review. We're trying to downsize it, to
Yeah.
make it have less impact. We're trying to do it as cost effectively as we can.
Sure.
The alternative is go build the one that's already approved, and I don't think any of us actually would want that to happen.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with the new law, and its details enough to say there would be a big change because of the new laws, or,
I'll look into it to make sure that, that it does not apply or that it does apply. And I think as part of this review, even if we don't make it subject to the bylaw, that if we incorporate some of the things that we do want to see on future developments, such as bioretention areas, to help with the recharge and the roof drains, that's acceptable, even though if we don't make them toe the whole line about
Right.
the stormwater
Right.
bylaws. So,
right.
I think if you decide to either stick with Nick Laney as the planning board and conservation's reviewer, or if you go with a 53G that's independent, I think it does require my interaction with them to try to keep this down to something reasonable, because sometimes it can get out of hand with two different reviewers finding
Yes.
two different
Sure.
approaches to.
I mean, it's gonna be additional cost anyway for him to do what he has to do. So, I'm for just keeping the current guy.
I don't think it's the same guy.
Right. I mean, I have no problem keeping it in-house with the planning board's consultant. I mean, if John can have him deal with some of the other issues, check on the stormwater bylaw to make sure, if he needs to look at that or whatever. I know there's items you have to address that he already had asked for, so we're gonna have to wait for those to be finished.
Yeah. And then also the other thing is, we have greater than 4 lots in a subdivision, right? Residential subdivision, you're subject to the full extent of the stormwater regulations on DEP. If you're more or less, you don't have to. So We are running.
Under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Otherwise, with the state stormwater management regulations. So, you know, we are providing, you know, we're complying. You know, Mr. Laney's comment about the infiltration around, you know, however we come to a conclusion on that, we were complying with everything else. So we can work through that part of it, or that might be a part that we can't meet. But we are meeting most of the stormwater management regulations.
You actually have a feature in this that's an improvement and enhancement over the prior design, which is the wet portion of the basin.
Yeah, it does.
I don't think the prior design had that feature.
No, but it did lose infiltration feature of the basin.
What they're mentioning is that the basin will have standing water in it. So it won't be a recharge basin, it's gonna be a standing water feature. Maybe it dries up certain times of the year, but it is designed to have the water in it.
Can you treat those for mosquito breeding and so forth? I guess you can,
That's
huh?
a question that I had, because Mr. Lane brought that up about so mosquitoes.
Like I said, 'cause I didn't think the planning board liked to see those typically, because they
Yeah.
want to get away from them.
What do you spray them?
Right, to,
Is like the mosquito dunks or
Yeah,
those
it's-
for conservation? I mean, that's something I want to check with.
Mosquito control drops those
Discs
mosquito
in.
dunks into the catch basins.
Oh,
And
okay.
sometimes what mosquito control can get away with, a lot of other parties can't. So
Yeah.
we have to look at that as well. But
Yeah.
it is a contaminant to stormwater, so we have to look at it under the Clean Waters Act and see if that's acceptable. But
All right.
so I guess the bottom line is that it really needs to be decided on who's going to review it, and if it is Mr. Laney, I would work closely with him to explain what we're concerned about. I would presume that he'd be paid from any fees that have been deposited for the planning board? Or how's that being handled? Because I noticed he sent an invoice to someone, and I don't know if he...
Planning board.
Okay. So we'd have to work out who's gonna pay him, because we don't have a fee at this point collected from the applicant, but if they have sufficient capability of working the extra work that we ask for through the planning board, then I think that's how it should be handled. But if we have to collect a separate fee to satisfy Mr. Laney to work for us, then they're gonna have to come up with the extra money. So,
we'll approach and find out what he wants to do, if there's enough in that to just roll it over and
Yeah,
review it. And
From recollection, I mean, what the invoice was and what the cost was, and that should be
Yeah.
able to.
But we're in favor by majority that,
Okay.
yeah.
all right, so I would recommend continuing it to your July 17th meeting.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to continue to the 17th.
17th. Moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
17, right?
Yes, we're on vacation the other.
I can't be here for that one.
So the next meeting after that?
First Tuesday in,
August, so it'll be the, is that the 7th up there?
Why don't we leave it for now on the 17th? I'll check with Mr. Peters to see if he's comfortable having Mr. Driscoll here. His preference in the past has been to have the, sort of, cover things. So,
If between now and then, John can talk to Laney and talk to you and
in
get
the next
it
couple days, I'll get back to you and let you know whether we need to.
all straightened out before then.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So,
All right.
let's keep it on for July
17th.
17th. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all too, see you.
Thank you.
Once again.
Have a nice evening in Marshall.
Thankfully, it's only about a half an hour drive.
Watch out for those Mounties.
I'm not driving the bus.
Next on the agenda is Luke Drive off Brooks Place, which it looks like
We
they've,
we haven't received any new plans, so I'm going to recommend that it be continued to the 17th.
Okay.
I will entertain a motion to continue.
Motion to continue 17th.
Moving second, those in favor?
Aye.
Moved. Next is 1 Ames Drive.
They asked for continuance because they're at the ZBA 40B meeting right now. And so they couldn't be here and there at the same time, so they want to go to the next meeting.
Where is that meeting?
At the Howard School,
It's at the school? Okay, thank you.
cafeteria, at the Howard School cafeteria.
Is there a reason why they're over there? Room?
Bigger space, yeah.
Bigger space, a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to continue 1 Ames Drive till the 17th.
Motion to continue the 17th.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. We already dealt with Its Way. Pratts Landing, reinstallation of an electric.
The Open Space Committee would like to propose having an electrician take the electric service that runs from the street to the pole that's out there and bring the power down from the top of the pole to a standalone pedestal that would have a service panel on it for 100 amp, I believe it is, service panel with some ground fault protected outlets to be able to plug in for events that were being there, and one extra duty plug for a food truck or something that might be parked up there. And since the Open Space Committee doesn't really have jurisdiction over it, it's the commission's, they wanted to ask you if that was all right. And they've got a price of $1,400 to do that work. And we had it checked out by one of the members who consulted another electrician and said that was a municipal electrician for a little bit bigger town that's nearby. And they said that was an excellent price.
Okay.
I have no problems.
No?
We'd be using some grant money, so it would have to be authorized, this expenditure itself would have to be authorized by the commission eventually when it's brought in.
I'll entertain a motion to allow Open Space to put in an electrical service for
I'll
Pratts.
make the motion.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. 55 Crescent Street.
I spoke with the gentleman today, and he plans to meet with me on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, where I can go out and stake out on the ground what he has for his plans versus what we discussed here. I can take measurements and then be able to write up a change in the conservation easement document with accurate distances instead of a sketch like I prepared for the commission. So it would need to be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Scotland Street Model Airplane.
Nothing,
We'll continue that on to the next one. Number 9, which is 43 Belmont Street Rear, which I believe is a hearing.
there's a hearing going on. We do have the plan in that notebook there for everybody to take a look at if you want to, or you can go to the meeting after this and over there.
Is
and
it
see
here or Howard?
The Howard.
At the Howard. And the only issue that I can find on it that we have any legitimate concern about is the fact that they have a limited crossing project to get from Belmont Street to the site, which is allowable under the Wetlands Protection Act. And because this is a 40B, our bylaw doesn't count for anything, unfortunately. But they are showing a couple of areas that, at least 3 maybe, areas they want to fill for their convenience, so that they can have proper alignment of straight line roadway geometry. And I think they could put a curve in and go around it instead of filling it. And I want to insist that the zoning board require that as any approval that may come way down the road on this. So I plan to go over there after this meeting and make sure we bring that up.
Between those areas they want to fill and the crossing, how much disturbance?
It's only a small amount, 500 square feet here.
I just didn't know if that went over, by adding them all up, the threshold for...
Well, the Wetlands Protection Act frowns upon filling wetlands to meet buffer setbacks, or for septic systems, for example, or for putting in roadways. So filling a wetland when you don't have to is discouraged. And I think it's minor, if you want to really get down to that, but I don't think we should be allowing it for this. And then the next one comes in, especially when over at East Center Street for the apartments at Riverbend, we wouldn't allow them to go right up to the edge of the wetland. We made them provide some type of buffer, and they honored at least some type of buffer over there. They didn't give us a 50-foot buffer, but they gave us a buffer over there.
Might be a good case for our fence.
Yep. Yep. So, the Wetlands Protection Act says you can fill a finger light projection, but everything that it says they can do, it is with the permission of the commission, that it's not mandatory that you allow it. Only on the limited crossing. Limited crossings, that's a separate category, and they are allowed to do that, and we kind of have to approve it as long as they mitigate by compensating for it. And they're proposing to restore or mitigate it by putting in a constructed wetland elsewhere on the site, but I don't feel that we should set that kind of precedent with allowing them to do it, because other people will ask, and even though this is a 40B, you're still allowing it. So if we object, at least we're holding the line.
I can't see why we would allow it anyway for their convenience. I mean, you know, we don't have to, so.
No,
I
you don't
think,
have to.
You know,
So, for example, one of their long driveways is pretty straight, and it looks good on paper, and that's how engineers and architects like to draw things. But what they could do is they could start a little bit farther away from the wetlands and put a small curve in the roadway, and it might even add some traffic control by slowing traffic down, because if it's straightaways, it's
Yeah.
speedy.
Yeah.
If it's curvy, it's less speed.
Yeah. How long is it, John? Roughly,
Probably the area that's
the road?
into.
Yeah.
It runs the whole, it circles the
Oh, okay.
two apartment buildings themselves. So it's substantial, and it looks like an oval
Yeah.
type of layout. Oval being curved on both ends and straightaways on the sides of it. So I would say the areas that we're talking about are probably a couple hundred feet straightaways where they could put a bend in it.
you know, I think,
Have
you
to
know.
wait and see, yeah.
All right, I'll take it as a consensus for me to
Yes.
go over
Yeah,
and
that's-
Yeah,
state.
And I think everything else is some signature stuff. 50 Brooks Place, certificate of compliance request.
Yes, that one is constructed, fully constructed with a weedy grass surface, but
those
it's
have to-
at
we have
least
to vote
stable.
on those.
Yeah.
So I'm recommending issue COC without a bond on that one.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to issue certificate of compliance without a bond.
No, make the motion. No, second it.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Next, we have 91 Ash Street for a partial certificate of compliance.
If we're doing a partial, it's appropriate because the ground is not fully germinated, the grass is not fully germinated, it's been hydroseeded. It's not doing very well with the dry weather that we've had. And so I was at first inclined to say not issue a certificate at all on it. But if we do a partial, that may preclude the requirement of having to put a $1,500 bond down on it. I believe that the attorneys that are holding back money for the people that purchased the house are holding back some money, so I believe the developer will finish the thing off and request a final certificate, but that's not guaranteed. I'd either recommend issuing a full certificate. Did we already check off that it's a partial? Oh, okay.
We can uncheck it.
But isn't it
I
on the
have
same?
magic things to do that.
What's the partial versus the full allowance to do? Sell?
The partial is allowable, and we indicate what's not finished, which would be the proper germination of grass, which is about the only thing.
But issuing it, what does issuing it give them the ability to do?
I'm just afraid there's no teeth in it if we issue the partial without the
I-
bond having the money like we did the other one
Yeah.
set in it. There's no reason for them to finish it or come back.
To do a partial to me.
It-
I mean,
It takes a very meticulous attorney to see the difference between partial and a full certificate. And so it may be overlooked for a couple of buyers or any refinancing that's done, and then all of a sudden somebody down the road's gonna notice it. And that person would be responsible for coming in and paying the fee to get the full compliance. So I would feel better issuing a full certificate of compliance with a bond.
Is it holding them up from doing anything because they don't have it? Not really.
I think it's
huh?
only holding up money from the
Okay.
closing attorneys that are holding
Right.
back the money, and they probably will release a good chunk of it if they get a partial.
Yeah.
Whereas if we hold $1,500 of their money, and the attorney has some money, I think it's got some teeth in it to get the thing properly germinated, so it doesn't wash out. Right now, you can see the gutters are washing out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I spoke with one of the homeowners today, and he's okay with it, but not every buyer is always okay with the way the developer left the property. So
Yeah.
I would recommend either not issuing any certificate, or if we do issue it, it's a full and we get $1,500, and keep it until it's completed.
Full, with the bond.
with the bond.
Yeah.
So I'll entertain a motion to issue a completed certificate of compliance with a $1,500 bond.
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
And it's the same with 101.
Partial versus,
Again,
Same thing.
entertain a motion to issue a
$1,500
full
bond.
certificate of
Yeah.
compliance with a $1,500
And
bond.
it's
I'll make the
consistent
motion.
too.
I'll second it.
Moving second, all those in favor?
aye.
Moved, seconded. Do you want us to sign these, or you want to reprint them and we'll do it? It's the partials checked off.
I think that we can fix that one little box.
White out the dot and check it off.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
No.
I mean, as long as the commission's
Because
aware
it's a
that
long
we're
time.
making
Right.
that change.
Put
Okay.
a little initial there.
Yeah, that's what we can do.
And I'll leave the other one back, because I didn't pass that one around.
Oh, wait 1 second.
Yep.
Well, I do these magic things.
This will be changed too.
Yep, that's the other one. And we have a request.
We have a sign for Beacon Street because I had the wrong slip at the last meeting.
54 Beacon Street,
Paperwork.
which we need signatures. And then we have 322 East Center Street.
This is the apartments at the River Bend, and during the inspection, I discovered they had not constructed a part of the drainage system over there. So I asked them to install it, and they did. And by just looking at it, I could see that it wasn't going to work. So they questioned me on it. We went out and took buckets of water, poured the water, and it completely bypassed the drain structure that they
I
put in.
saw him working on it.
So I said, have them, before you even call me out, have them pour their own water and let them see that it works before you waste my time coming back out again. And I drove by one time and I saw them doing that, so I knew that when I got the call that it probably was going to be all right, but we took buckets of water again and dumped them, and it went into the drain structure like it was supposed to. So the last time it came before us, I had not recommended issuing it, but at this point, I'd recommend issuing a COC without a bond. It's all done.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
No second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
So much for the apartments. I wonder if they're all full.
From what I heard, they are.
Are they? I mean, this
As soon
Look
as
like
one
it.
empties, there's another person that comes in.
amazing. Well, that's the state of the housing. This new one proposed will fill too.
That's it.
Anything else? If not,
Motion to.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
No second.
Multiple seconds. All those in favor?